really does resemble daal. Hey, it's Greg here with maritimegardening.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make a dish called daal. D-A-L or D-A-A-L. I mean, it's not an English word, so and I may not even be pronouncing it correctly, but it's a kind of mushy yellow or orange dish that goes with various kinds of Indian food, or that general part of the world. Okay, so you'd have it with a curry, that sort of thing. Tonight I'm making goat biryani, and this is a side dish that goes with it. It's not hot and spicy. It's a little more sort of one of those things you have with it to sort of calm everything down, but it goes really well with it. It's a starchy side dish that would go with everything. So traditionally, and the reason I'm doing this on the Maritime Gardening channel is not to show my amazing cultural worldliness, but to explain how to make it using squash. So, and that's why it's on my channel. I'm not going to do a video on how to make biryani because there's much better channels out there, much more authentic than me, showing how to make biryani, and whatever I do probably is a bad facsimile of that. And I have a recipe here I've used for years for making daal, and traditionally it uses various types of lentils, things like that. You can even make it using split peas. There's various kinds of ingredients. I got a kind of daal here. So the dish is called daal, but actually it's a word for a broad category of kinds of lentils, right? Red lentils are a great one to use because they cook so quickly. And basically from being dried to being cooked, it might take half an hour without soaking, right? So it's a fast, preservable thing to grow. Sadly, where I live, I'm sure there might be a version of lentil that would grow in Atlantic Canada or various parts of Canada, but I've tried to grow lentils here. I've never had any success. That's not to say it can't be done, but it's probably a reason that it's more of a common food in hotter countries with longer growing seasons and that sort of thing. So yes, I can buy lentils at the store and they're not that expensive. But if you grow squash in a garden and you grow a lot of it like I do, then you harvest a lot, and they keep well and they store well, and they're a great thing to grow for that reason, but they all have to be used up before they go bad. If you have them in cold storage, I have them in my garage right now, which is about 5 degrees Celsius all winter long. Some of them keep for 2 months, some of them keep for 3 months, some of them keep for 4 months. I really don't have a lot of luck. Once we get into March, they all have to be used up. So I try to find a way to use them all the time. And I like doing my squash the way a lot of people do with butter and brown sugar and salt and all that sort of stuff. That's a common way for us to do it, and making squash soup and just using it as an ingredient in things. But over time, I've come to use it this way as well. Does it taste exactly the same? No. Someone with a really fine palate, with a lot of experience with this sort of cuisine, would notice the difference. The texture is very similar, it looks similar, and you're using all the same spices. I'll go through that today. But of course, squash and lentils don't taste the same. A person with an unrefined palate or an inexperienced palate might not know the difference, right? Like sometimes my kids don't know because they're kids. They don't really have a lot of experience. Haven't had it 1,000 times, right? They didn't grow up. They grow up. We have this sort of food fairly often, but kids are different than adults. They like hot dogs and Kraft dinner. They think that's delicious food. So they got a little ways to go with their palates, right? But anyway, let's get to the ingredients here. So today, before I started filming, I just took a squash and peeled it and scooped out the guts and stuck it in a pan. And I had about like a cup of water in with that, and just brought it to a boil and simmered it, for about 10-15 minutes, and then drained out the water. Okay, and that's what I've got here. You'll notice some of these are a little bit burnt because I stepped away from it to do something else, and all the water boiled off. But I caught it just in time that it doesn't smell like burn, so it should be all right. It's a faux pas, but whatever. Okay, so for step one is to just cut up some onions and get them frying in some oil. If you're traditional, you could use this stuff called ghee, which is sort of like butter with all the milk removed, or you just use butter, or you can use coconut oil, or just regular plain old vegetable oil. or vegetable ghee, right? Fat, some kind of fat, right? It's just a key part of it. Key stage in making daal, whether you're using real lentils or squash, is frying the onions until they're golden, if not a little bit burnt, and also frying the spices. All right, so let's go over to the pan and let me show you how this is all going to happen. All right, so here we are with the pan. I'll get some oil going here. We'll put about, I don't know, tablespoon and a half of the oil. All right, just using regular vegetable oil here. And get the onions going in there. And some people say put the spices in before the onions. You risk burning them if you do that. You can do that. This is sort of easier. It's more idiot-proof if you just fry the onions and the spices together. You want to have a teaspoon of ginger, ideally fresh ginger, but if you don't have fresh ginger, just use dry ginger and get on with your life. Teaspoon of cumin. I got whole cumin here. If all you got is dried cumin, fine, use that. I'm going to put a teaspoon of turmeric in. Okay, these ingredients I'd say are essential. Also, we need a teaspoon of salt. All right, so these ingredients are essential. The ones I'm about to add here make it better, but like if all you have are the few things I put in so far, that's fine. But anyway, we want half a teaspoon of mustard seed. Okay, if you got this, you got it. If you don't have it, just get on with your life. Don't use it. Onion seed. This is really difficult to find. You'd have to go to an Indian store or something, maybe a Asian grocery to get that. An onion seed. And the stuff called garam masala. G-A-R-A-M-M-A-S-A-L-A. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. Half a teaspoon of that. This, if you were going to buy of the onion seed, the mustard seed, and the garam masala is the one I'd go get if I wanted to, because this is a sort of a key ingredient in a lot of foods in this category. Okay, a lot of things ask for it, call for it. Okay, now we got that, and we're just going to just tend the pan. You don't want to walk away from this. You're not going to be stirring it all the time, but basically you're going to be around the kitchen, cleaning up, doing a little dish, just wiping down countertops, just puttering around, and every minute or so you move this around a little bit. If it seems like it's drying out, add a little bit of oil, right? Manage the temperature. I got mine in about medium heat. Okay. What you're trying to do is brown the onions and sort of brown / fry the spices. And by doing that, you're really just toasting up everything and enhancing the flavor. It makes a big difference in the end when you're adding everything else. Now, I'm going to be adding cooked squash to this. If you are making lentils, you could either add the dry lentils to this and add water and bring it all to a boil, or you can cook the lentils prior to all of this, right? So that they're soft and mushy and just add them to it. You can do it either way. I'm sure there's different arguments why you do it one way or the other, but you can do it either way and it'll work. But for this sort of squash method, I recommend this approach. All right. All right, so I'm going to work on that, and then I'll catch up with you when this is sort of browned up a little bit. All right. Another good trick for browning stuff is going to put spices on that spoon. Don't want to waste those. Another good trick for browning stuff is to use a lid, but not a lid that holds the steam in. We don't want to steam this. We want to fry everything. And it sort of wants to stick a little bit, so I'm just going to keep moving it around a little bit so it doesn't do that. There's water in the onion, and the water in the onion will keep things from sticking if you keep stuff moving around. But just to speed that process up, if speed matters to you, you put on a lid, but not a lid that's going to hold the steam in. Like this here lid does not go with this pan, so it's going to let the steam out. I got it on a bit of an angle. You can see there's steam coming out here. I don't know how well that comes across on camera. Right, so I'm not steaming these. The lid's just increasing the overall heat in here. It might shave, 2, 3, 4 minutes off of the overall cooking time. All these things matter when you're trying to get things done, right? These are the things that make home cooking a little bit easier. Just little things like this the chefs use. Okay, so I think we got everything pretty much where it needs to be. Got a bit of stuff sort of stuck on the bottom there. We're using a stainless steel pan. But we're going to add some water here. We're going to add a half cup of water just to sort of loosen everything up and get all the flavors that we've built up distributed. Right, and just to get some of that stuff off the bottom, that little bit of water is really all you need to for lack of a better term, deglaze. I'm not really scraping here, I'm just moving stuff around, even though it sounds like I'm scraping. That's good enough. Okay, now we put these in. If you were using lentils, you'd wash the lentils and you'd put them in here. If you were using washed lentils, you'd actually fry them in with the spices a little bit as well. But because we don't have lentils and we already have like cooked squash, just do it like this. What we want to do is just mash the squash. Now I'm sure there's someone watching this that grew up with this type of cuisine or is well acquainted with it. That is just mortified at what I'm doing here. But you just have to trust me that it works. It turns out just fine. And again, it doesn't taste exactly the same. But you're using the ingredients, right? You grew the squash, you're trying to use it up. It works as a substitute. Okay, it's not the same, it's different, but it looks, when it's all done, it's, because dal, when it's finished cooking, is just a mush, okay? And the more browned up you get the onions, the better it is, because there's a real onion flavor, sort of a browned onion flavor that really improves it. And how much water you add really depends on the type of squash you're cooking with and how, some squash seems to have a almost infinite ability to take on water. I'm actually going to add another half cup. And I'm going to turn this up here, and what I like to have, I thought I'd turn that up, but I guess I turned it off. What I like to do is once I add the squash back in, I like to observe that it's boiling. All right, so I'm just going to leave that for a minute until I can even turn it right up. Okay, I'm just going to move this around a little bit. Continue to mash so it has that right texture. Orange mush. All right, there. That's good enough. Now, this is a stage of the process you don't want to walk away because, there's the risk of burning it is high now because you really don't have a lot of liquid going on here. But this is it's about the right texture, right? You can see how that falls off the fork. I mean, it depends on how you like it, I guess, how you grew up eating it or whatever. But and dal is usually like a mush. Okay, this is mush. So I'm just going to continue to sort of tend this until I can hear. There's a bit of steam coming off now, until I can just tell that it's really the whole thing's been brought up to a temperature, and that it appears to be boiling. Okay, it's starting to boil now. You can see it sort of. I don't know how well you can hear that sound. I'll bring my microphone a bit closer to the, you sort of hear, right? Hot pan. You can see it sort of starting to look alive, right? All right, that's good. Okay, for me, we've got enough heat now. I can turn the heat off. And where's my lid? Put the lid on. Okay, the heat's off. Got a lid on here. It's not going to burn on because I've turned the heat off. Okay, now I can just leave this for 20 minutes, half an hour, right? If you want to keep it warm, just put a blanket over it, take it off the burner and all that sort of stuff. But just leave it like that for, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, just so all the flavors can sort of get to know one another before serving. All right, so it's been about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and we're gonna just give it a little taste test, see where we are. All right, so just put a little bit on the plate here. You can, I mean, for those of you that have experience with this type of cuisine, it really does look like daal. Like, I don't know, like, let me bring it in a little closer here, but it really does resemble daal. Again, it doesn't taste exactly like it because squash is sweeter than, lentils and stuff like that. It's equally starchy, but it has a different flavor than them, right? It's not as starchy, I suppose, but it's a sweeter, it's sort of like sweet daal, you might want to call it, right? But boy, does it look like it, especially with the little, the little seeds and stuff like that in there to give it that authentic look. All right, so let's give her a little taste test here, just to see what we're doing with this. This is probably going to be a little bit hot, but it's good to do this just before you serve, because maybe it needs a little bit more salt. Maybe you can't give it less salt. Now remember, when we made this, I put a teaspoon of salt in, right? I think it's okay like that. I think we've got enough salt. I think we've got everything just right. This really does taste a lot like daal. It's not the same. It almost tastes like daal with a little brown sugar thrown into it. It's got a sweet taste because the squash has sugar, right? But yeah, if that's something you're, part of your routine is making curries and biryanis and things like that, and you have this side dish with it, or if you've never had this as a side dish, just look it up, D-A-L, read about it, Wikipedia, read different recipes. The ingredients out there, if you look up recipes on how to make daal, everybody makes it a different way. What I've done here is kind of as basic as I could think of to put together. One thing I forgot to mention, when I was going through the ingredients, chili powder. The recipe I used a teaspoon of chili powder for the amount I had here, right? You're making we got about, finished product, about 3 cups, right? So we used about 3 cups of squash, right? I had a squash that was about the size of 2 fists, right? Fairly sizable squash, maybe a 2-pound squash or something like that, right? So a teaspoon of chili powder. And of course, the amount of spices and all that sort of stuff you use is going to be adjusted relative to the amount you're making, right? So I used a squash that was about the size of 2 of my fists. If you're a small person, that might even be 3 fists, right? I'm 6'4", I got big hands, all right? But anyway, daal from squash. That's how I do it. Maybe give it a try and see what you think. It's a great way to use that up, especially if you're a vegetarian and you're trying to just add things to your repertoire and really, broaden out your diet. Certainly food from that part of the world, there's a lot of people in that part of the world that are vegetarians, so they kind of know what they're doing. They kind of figured it out a long time ago. It's going to be a lot better than that, tasteless soy burger that you spent, twice the price of beef for. Just learning how to prepare vegetables using the spices to make the most of them. So anyway, I think that's about enough for me. There's a huge raging storm going on outside, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose power any minute now, so I better wrap this up. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, have fun in your garden, have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.